I want to reconnect a story about exploration, empowerment, and the tiny house. Well, the thing is, I was thinking about what should I be talking about today, because in the Netherlands at the moment we're doing a lot of presentation, tiny houses, how long are they, how big are they? But I thought it might be also a bit more interesting to talk about what is behind the whole decision to go into a tiny house lifestyle, and the road that led me and many others in Europe actually already there. I want to start with some funny anecdote from a couple of weeks ago. We had at the moment I'm living in one of Europe's first tiny house villages in the Netherlands. It's an old abandoned allotment complex, and in cooperation with a building developer, we actually convinced the municipality to do a 2-year sustainability project there, where instead of just having the bulldozers ram all the trees away and have the land lying there for a couple of years until the buildings are ready to be built, we're going to do sustainable living communities on a temporary basis, utilizing tiny houses that are usually home built by the people themselves. And I had a journalist come in for an interview, and she looked at me and she was asking a kind of question about the lifestyle and the things that are waiting for us now. And I kind of looked at her and I said, you know what? I think I'm done. Like, I'm pretty much done. And she was like, what do you mean by that? I said, well, if you look at the bucket list of a basic human being, I have a house, I have a family, I'm debt free. I have lots of time now to explore and to invent. And my experiences are the main focus of my endeavors. My decisions are not based on money anymore. And so basically that ticks most of the boxes that in the Western world often you can only get to when you're in your 50s, 60s, or you've got a really good job. And I saw her wandering through our Levy village, and she kept thinking about it. And an hour later I met her again somewhere, and she was just whispering like, the guy's done. The guy, he's done. And I see these people wondering, like they all live in a very different mindset than we do. But one thing they can connect to is the fact that through some magical formula, you have a lot of people in their 20s, 30s now that built a house for themselves, found a place to put it, and are actually now experiencing and living life to the fullest already at that early age. And that was something that stuck with me, and I hope with her as well. She wrote a very nice article afterwards, so I think it was fun. But that's something that really stayed with me, and I want to tell you today about how I actually got to the point where I can tick these boxes now, and the fact that it wasn't actually very hard, or that I wasn't very fortunate to get here, but it was just a few simple steps that I took in order to facilitate this lifestyle and actually get us to where we are now. My private journey, or my story, is basically, I am from actually my cousin is here as well today, so you can vouch for that. We're from a very small village in the countryside of Austria. I think I once counted about 70 people living there or something, probably less by now. And grew up on the countryside, then moved up the ladder, also city-wise, in a way that I moved to Innsbruck, which was like 250,000 people, and then after that moved to East London, and obviously I had quite a normal school education, but you graduate from one school, you jump into the next one, you need to earn money. I started jobs, I realized I didn't want to work in a job that early, so I went to university, I did a degree in linguistics. After that, went to London, did what every hard-working academic does in London, and started working in a pub. And after a while, found myself working for $6.50 an hour, 5-6 days a week. Constantly overworked. Might have partied a bit too much, but the 2 days off on the weekends were usually not used for recreational purposes, rather than just validating those 5-6 days of really hard work by just getting as pissed as I could possibly get, which is something I think a lot of people can relate to. And at some point I found myself thinking, I did everything the way I was supposed to do, from school to university to any kind of I lived my life in a very normal way, but it just felt really like it was hard to make a living. It was hard to just pay my bills at the end of the month, and it's not like I was living a big life or something. I lived with 5 people in a shared house. I basically spend no money on food, on very good food at least. And I was wondering, like, is it just me or are others struggling as much as well? And with that question followed the follow-up was, wasn't there something else that I wanted to do with my life? Like, what is it? Why am I here? Why am I working as a biker? And I don't have enough time to think about what it actually is that I wanted, or why I even got here in the first place. Come on in. At some point I'm going to talk about tiny houses, but first you're going to listen to my boring story.
I'm not sure this is the right room.
It can be. What do you want to learn about it? So from that decision, like, okay, I'm quite unhappy, but what is it actually that makes me happy? Because there was one thing I knew for certain. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had been happy before in life, happier at least. And I want to be happy. Like most people, I want to be loved and appreciated by the people around me. And I want to be inspired in life and maybe do things that benefit the greater good in the world. But how do I get there? How do I start doing that? And the quite sober realization for me was that I just don't have time to find out what makes me happy anymore because I'm working, and on the days I'm not working actually, I just need to relax and just kind of blow off some steam. So the first step for me was I needed to create freedom for myself and just slow down and find out what it actually is that was driving me in life. I realized that money dictated most of my life decisions, where I went to eat, what my next job was going to be, where I would be in a month's time. It was all just always based on the premise of money. And I realized the assumption was always there's a certain amount of money that you just need in order to live. You need an hourly wage for this and that in order to pay for this and that. And how do I possibly get there? And then at some point I thought, you know what, maybe we should change the paradigm and ask ourselves a very different question, which is, I expect a certain personal freedom and flexibility in life. And how much money do I really need in order to get there? So what I started doing was I was lowering the cost of living while trying to live more or less the same lifestyle, do the things that still make me happy. And on that journey figured out what is it that I really need. And if you look at basic pyramid of needs, I mean the things that we really need in life as basic needs even, they come for a quite low price. It's in food, water, warmth and rest. Which I realize when I say for a low price in London, nothing is for a low price. I mean even the rest or the warmth of the water can be quite pricey around here. But security, safety comes with whatever housing you kind of organize for yourself, and then intimate relationships, friends, prestige, feeling of accomplishment. All of these things come for free as well. So why is it that we need to work so much in order to fulfill our very basic needs? What I realized is, in order to create financial freedom for myself, to get the real thinking process about my existential questions starting, I need to eradicate a few things from my life, especially the ones that don't really mean very much to me emotionally, but just weigh me down financially. In the process, scanning my own what's coming in and what's going out, I quickly realized that we pay a lot for convenience in our modern world, and starting from plastic, fast food, whatever has to be on the go, whatever we outsource, whenever someone's doing something for us that we could potentially do but I don't think we have the time for, that's what we pay for. Then also, to be honest, there was never really my problem, but fashion-dependent consumption in the way that basic needs keep being reevaluated for the wrong reasons, just in order to create needs that are basically not there. And the same with status, is sort of validation for yourself and how much you work in life. Once I eliminated all of these ones, I actually cut it down to what really mattered for me most. And then I realized all the things that I need actually are already here, starting from clothes or many other electronic things in my life. It's already there. And as soon as I don't need the status or a certain brand or model of a phone, I can live for much, much less than that. We started doing things ourselves. When I say we, I mean me and my girlfriend Maria. We set ourselves some really funny self-experiments in the way that we didn't buy things anymore that were new. We were only buying either second-hand, or we were making it ourselves, or we were repairing everything. And that really made us realize the wonderful, the rewarding feeling you get when you put some of your energy into something, either mending it or creating it yourself. think once we're in a society where you can say, like, a guy once said to me, like, you always bring fresh food to work, but I mean, who has the time for cooking? And I find that really cynical and sad, because it's, at some point, if we cannot even imagine having the time to prepare our own nutrition, that's a society where the velocity is just too high, I think. And the same with raising children. I spoke to so many people that actually pay one income of two people working full-time just to pay the nanny. And if I work an entire week just to pay for a woman looking after my child, there's something wrong in the equation, and I think it needs to be considered. So what we did is very hands-on things. We calculated our financial needs. We thought, okay, we have a small room, we need maybe £550 a month, let's do it. We had less financial earnings. We realized, why are we still working 5 days a week? We went from 5 days to a much better schedule. We went to 4 to 3. In the end, I was only working 2 days a week for the company. It was hard to negotiate that deal, but it still works. And I was wondering, 5 to 2 ratio, 5-day work week, it's not a God-given thing. It's a very cultural application that was created over the years. Actually, the 8-hour work days came. 8-hour work days and the 40-hour work week, that's what I mean, was introduced by the car industry in the 1940s by Henry Ford, and it was just to deregulate down from 10 and 16-hour days. So I think in our evolutionary journey, I think we could go a step further down, because machines are doing a lot of our work these days. I think there is a possibility that we could collectively decide to work less than 8 hours a day. Because at the end of the day, it's how much really do I sacrifice in my life experience just for convenience. And for us, the answer was, I'm not going to work 5 days a week anymore. We worked 3 days a week in the beginning. It was a better work-life balance. We actually had time and flexibility to actually think about stuff in life again. And the things that made us happy, we actually had time to just chase something sparkling when we saw it on the street. Because there's not always someone waiting around the corner for you to bombard you with some new information. And the less we had and the more we downsized, the more we realized we had time for the experience that we were always lacking beforehand. So once we realized that we needed, that we created this freedom for ourselves, we actually had the possibility to reconnect with our environment because we had the time for it. So what did we start doing? First, I was wondering, like, okay, why do we need a connection? Because in our world, like, I lived in London back then, there were 14 million people around me, and I thought, these people are not living with me. They might be living besides me or parallel to me, but there is no connection that I feel like. I felt very lonely in a city of 14 million people. And I thought, well, people are trying to be individualistic and on their own so much. Do people even need connection? And I did an MA degree later on in anthropology, and I was researching into that matter. And matter of fact, we cannot deny that we are group animals. We work much better in teams. If we need to go out hunt together, we can only do it in teams. And so I think we need a connection in life, not only with the people around us, but also with the things that surround us, be it nature or just an abstract city like this. We should possibly, we need the basic understanding of our environment in order to feel like we belong. And if you watch a child on a playground or something like that, or whatever, asking, what is this, what is behind this, why does it smell like that? There is an inherent need in us to explore things and understand our environment. But at some point, it's just that drive is being killed throughout early adulthood, it seems. And people accept that things are the way they are, and they go with the flow. And that's something that I was willing to investigate further along. And then, obviously, the bigger everything gets, the more the abstractness starts. So I started focusing on 2 forms of alienation. I was wondering, I was really interested in why we're so alienated from the people in our lives and also from the objects that we surround ourselves with in life. And if we're looking into personal alienation, it's like I said before, the cities are growing, the abstraction is growing equally parallel with it. We live with a lot of people, we don't know who they are, we don't know where they're going, and they surround us on a daily basis, but they are just big black faces with question marks on their Facebook profile. So today they're talking about globalized loneliness in a way that it's more easy to be lonely these days than it has ever been before in human history. You can actually order your dinner to your doorstep. You pay online. You have a virtual job. You actually could possibly get by quite a while without actually interacting with human beings. And more we hear stories of people actually being having been found weeks after they already died and decayed in their apartment because no one actually cared for them anymore. And I think this is going to keep rising with the level of digitalization and globalization. And this is something that definitely we're going to have to consider in the future. The next point is, it's not just who are the people that surround me, but who am I in such a vast and abstract society? And with that I mean that in the past, if your dad was a shoemaker, if your dad was a farmer, if your dad was sharpening scissors or something like that was part of your identity often. You were part of a trade, of a guild. In Austria we still have, I remember a lot of farmers are not called by their surnames, but by their guild affiliations. My uncle still has a restaurant, it's called the Riversmith, and everyone calls him the Riversmith, not because he still is, but these are the affiliations they used to carry in the past. And you were the son of that smith, and we don't have that anymore. You're just XYZ in a city, you're a number, and you kind of validate yourself through the things you do in life. Maybe you make a name for yourself. But it is up to you to create your own identity, and it's much harder to feel affiliated with the people around you. And especially with the millennials now, we hear that a lot, that it is a group that has seemingly all the opportunities in the world. But imagine, I don't have to say imagine, every one of us, almost everyone that belongs to that group, you get out of university and people tell you, do whatever you want, just the world is your oyster, just go out and explore. But you can also suffocate with having too many possibilities in life. And I think that's why a lot of people are burning out at a very early stage, because people look at us and think we're privileged youth, and we actually have no wars and we can do whatever we want. But that also comes with a price, is often overlooked. And that individualization, you shouldn't forget that, again, we are group animals, we work better in groups, and I think it was only Descartes in the 17th century that really formed the idea of cogito ergo sum, and that all my experience comes from myself, and I think together with massive capitalism, that is a really dangerous recipe for loneliness and for greed and for power struggles. Because once we create our self-worth only by the bank account number that we have, that's a really heavy cross to carry, I think. And the consumption, at the end of the week, we just need to buy crap that we don't need because we earned that money and we better spend it for something. And I think this is what the personal alienation entails, and what I think it's going to unfold much more in the future. So these were the things that I was thinking about. And then what I got really interested about was the material alienation. And that really led me to this tiny house building as well. Because just as I didn't know the people around me, I also realized one day I know nothing about the world that we live in. I have no idea how a table is made, how legs of the table are holding the table together. I don't know what's behind that wall. I have no idea how artificial light is created. I was wondering, why do I not know any of that? And I went to university, and one of my lecturers, my mentor, she had lived with an indigenous tribe from Suriname for a couple of years. And one day she flew in on an airplane, on a landing strip in the jungle, and the leader of the clan greeted her and said, "The thing you just flew in on is fantastic. Let's sit down and show me how to build it." And she said, no, that's an airplane. I have no idea how to build an airplane. He's like, no, you don't understand. The thing you just came in, you're going to show me how to do it. I will fly my people out to the capital. It's going to be great. And she said, well, I cannot do it. But for him, it was inconceivable that you would actually put your life in the hands of something. You have no idea how to use it or to fly it. You don't have the slightest idea of what the concept is, why it even stays in the air. And that really stuck with me after a while, still when I heard about it, because I thought he's absolutely right. I have an iPhone that dictates my daily agenda. I follow it everywhere, but I have no idea who the people are behind it or what it does, what the consequences for the future, the medical side of anything. We just blindly trust in these things. And I understand that, of course, it got much more complex over the years, and I think especially because of that, we need to put an extra focus on trying to look behind these things and actually understand what comes out of a wall plug when I plug in my cable, because I'm not saying you have to understand everything in modern society, but I think that urge to at least try and have a basic grasp of the things that are surrounding you, that is something that gave me a very strong feeling of belonging to my environment, actually. And actually, I did some university studies on the fact that even in the indigenous tribe language of these people, I was interested. If the guy wants to build an airplane, I want to know why he doesn't understand the concept. And we actually together was working on a project where you could even see that the concept of ownership that we use, basically you have possession. You could say Bernie has a mother. Okay, that's a natural possession. But Bernie has a pen. It just means that I am the owner of this pen. And if you want to take it from me, it's going to be a violation against some law or anything. But ownership doesn't exist in the language, for example. The only remote concept that they have is that something is with me or in my sphere, or it enhances my life in a way. But the idea that I have something so you cannot have it just doesn't exist. So it really isn't. It's something that we invented, ownership, basically. The idea that you just grab a plot of land and you do not cultivate it, but you literally say, it's my land, I put my flag in it, and you're not allowed to use it now for 20 years, and you will see it just overgrowing with moss. It's an absurd concept if you think about it. But it was fun to see that in other societies that's not even a thing. Because we invented it, I think we can also get rid of it again. So I'm thinking about what are things made of? Because now that I actually discovered this curiosity, this childlike curiosity again, I was wondering, okay, go on Wikipedia, what comes out of a wall plug? What are airplanes actually made of? How does an airplane fly? And I started reading up on all these things that kind of were getting me excited for years, but I never had time to follow up on them. And also with that, one second. I'm not just what's coming out of stuff or how stuff made of, but the entire life cycle of products. And once you kind of burst that bubble, it's really hard to get back, because you realize a lot of the things we do make no sense. You know, they used to at some point in some environment. There is a reason we flush our toilets with rainwater, with drinking water, because at some point there were billions of people less on this planet, and we thought that drinking water is actually a good way of sanitation, and we had a lot of it. But I think these things have to be rethought in a world where actually people don't have water anymore. I mean, the whole California is going to run out of water within the next couple of months or years, and we're still flushing out with rainwater, with drinking water down the toilet. I mean, it's just bizarre. We were looking into not just the fact we were already not eating meat, for example, but like, why is eating a steak? It's about CO2, it's about cruelty. There's so many more things in the background processes going on. Why are there pineapples in winter? Why do we need pineapple in winter? Like, all of these things, that everything's available at any given point. I think this is mostly behavioral, and it can be changed if we so wish. And if people actually know again what a season is, for example. And so these are the things that we were working on that actually got us first liberating ourselves, so we actually have time again to do things in life. After we have time, we can actually think what it is that we want from life. Then we realize what is our environment, how can we reconnect with it, and then we get to the third stage, which for us was cultivation. We have the freedom, we have the knowledge, we have the drive and the curiosity. Let's do something with it. So we make it create and we innovate. For us, that meant that we started doing some fun projects in order to counteract this alienation that was both on a personal and material level. One of our first things that we did was we did a year without plastic, which sounded challenging, and it was even more so in real life, I think, because you realize it's everywhere. It's incredible. Like once you, it's like when someone tells you about a new word that you never had before, and all of a sudden you hear it everywhere. Plastic was everywhere, and it was almost impossible for us to get rid of it. But for an entire year, we tried living without it. We got to know great people. We went out of our way to just find vendors that would give us stuff in bags. And it was really nice because we really connected with the people around us, and it gave us an appreciation for what it meant to use plastic. We do use it again a tiny bit now, but never back to the levels that we did before. We're downsizing our stuff, also as a preparation for what was about to come. And we realized, I spoke to a friend of mine once about the idea of downsizing, because once you get in with the tiny house people, you do talk about downsizing quite a bit. And she said, I'm looking about it this way. If I have a pair of shoes in my suitcase that has been lying there for 7 years, I'm just egotistically holding on to something that could have brought so much joy to another person, actually. And from then on, I always thought about the things that I actually hold back because I might need them one day as something of potential joy for anyone else. And even if I might need another t-shirt in 2 more years, I'm just going to buy another one again. But just to keep something for the sake of having it was something that we try to not do anymore. I realize I sound like I'm a bit schizophrenic. I should probably say I more. From that comes a really strong sense of empowerment. Once you do all these things, and you learn nothing happens. You might hit your finger 10 times with a hammer, but you can still put 2 planks of wood together. From that comes a really strong sense of I can actually do stuff, and I don't need to be a professional. Neither do I have to be. I think we live in a world where, through YouTube, for example, I met a little boy once, and he said he doesn't want to start playing the guitar because he sees people online, they're so good at playing the guitar, what's the use in even starting? That's incredible. Because we live in a society where you always need to be in the cutting edge of whether it's technology or a skill set. It really takes out the fun for people. So, but I realized once I do it, and I actually don't care about it whether I'm good at it anymore, I can do pretty much anything and try it. So that brought me to the idea of, why don't we just build a house as well? Because we realized we were downsizing ourselves in any kind of aspect of our material and personal lives. But one thing that kept being a nuisance was rent. And we tried escaping rent through several things. We thought about buying a plot of land somewhere. And then what? I mean, then we could build a teepee on it or a woodshed or something like that. Okay, no, that's not legal. You can actually not just build whatever you want on a plot of land. I didn't know that either. So it needs to be something that is approved by zoning regulations, by building authorities. And once you enter that, you're kind of bound to lose because there's always something that will have to be a stamp you need or something. You cannot really do it yourself. You need an architect to draw it up for you. It's going to cost tens of hundreds of thousands of euros because that was out of the race as well, because we wanted to live without that. At that point, we realized our requirements were, we want to own it because we don't want to pay rent anymore. I mean, the concept of rent. There used to be rent to buy, which I thought was pretty cool. You rent for a couple of years and then you just pay a lump sum at the end and you get it. But sheer renting is just something that doesn't really work, I think, for most people. So we wanted to own it. It had to be affordable, it had to be small, energy efficient, built with as many natural materials as possible, and preferably close to nature. And if you look at that catalog of requirements, yeah, you're going to be probably looking at a hefty mortgage in order to get something like that. Or you have to be far outside the city, which we didn't want to do either. Because I know one day I'm going to be a weird farmer somewhere in a forest in southern France or something, but I don't think it's time for that yet. I think it's time now to just stay, at least for another while, within society and inspire people rather than just fucking off to the countryside. So, okay, how do we do that? And what is a house? Can we build? We're looking into the most weird things. I mean, there are people that live in caves very successfully. It's also not very legal in Europe, actually, so we jumped off that train after a while. What is a house and how do we build it? Actually, quite narrow regulations. Then we found the tiny house movement in America. It was exactly what we needed. I think one day Maria was just on YouTube and we found a guy called Morrison, and he's a carpenter from America, and he built himself a house within like a couple of months. And we saw it and we knew that's what we're going to do. We're going to build a house on a trailer. So what we did is we realized we had no knowledge how to build a house. Neither did we claim that we could build a birdhouse or something. We've never done that before. But one thing I knew was going to be a good starting point for us was a country that I knew where people throw a lot of good stuff away. That is Austria. People are quite prosperous. Houses are usually being renewed after 20 to 25 years. So what we did is we went back home to Austria, and we went like to the Austrian country and told people that were breaking down their houses, we want to help them if we can get the materials for free or for a very low cost. So we just met up with people and we broke their houses down. That was a lot of fun. We literally do anything, as long as the beam doesn't fall on your head. And so we just cut away wallboards and checked out what was behind them. And like in a retrospective fashion, we deconstructed houses. And thereby we actually learned how to build walls, how windows are framed in, how windows can be broken, and many other things. But so we just went there and broke houses down. And we were giving them a good run for their money. And at the end of the day, we ended up with tons of materials, mostly for free or for very little money. And we threw them in a trailer and brought them to the Netherlands, where we had moved at that point. After that, again, in the past, I would have just gone online and, well, I did. Is there a tiny house trailer? But the tiny house concept didn't really exist in Europe yet. So I thought, you know what? Let's just call up. As I called lots of trailer producers in the area until I found one that was crazy enough to try it. And we designed a tiny house trailer together. And that has, I think, now already been sold 250 times, not by me, because I was other people making money. But so there's already like 250 tiny houses built on the trailer that we designed back then, just out of the pure need of, screw it, like, well, just do it ourselves. Let's make something that wasn't there before. And we built a tiny house trailer. We built a foundation on it. We actually were preparing the walls meticulously, all the wood connections. I bought books on how to make woodwork, and because I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't want it to last for at least a couple of years. And we got some furniture makers to help us, and it was a really good process. And at the end of the day, it wasn't just friends that helped us and came and invested their energy and good spirits in our house. But for the actual erecting of the walls, I invited my parents from Austria, and everyone came. It was a really nice moment, actually. And then we all built the house together, or at least we erected the walls. And from then on, we just finished it off. And the only requirement that we set ourselves was either everything we want to do has to be either self-made or taught by a professional, like things where you don't want to burn your house down with installing an oven flue in the wrong way or something like that. So we got people that were crazy enough to not do the work, but go there and we would pay them to literally tell us what to do. And that was really fun because people actually enjoyed that process as well. So we're doing our own electricity, our own wiring, and all of these kind of crazy things. And we got electrocuted a few times, but we're still here. 12 volt edition, not that way, they say. What we have now is a tiny house on wheels that has all the features of a main house, basically. You walk in, the photos on the left, you have a living room, you have an upstairs loft. Well, back then for a photo shoot, we just made a really cool minimalist loft with only a chair. There's a lot of mess there now. Our cats have mostly taken up the space, actually. And when you turn to the right, you see a wood stove that heats our entire house within half an hour, basically. We have a double kitchen because we're scanning our own kind of private needs. We kept thinking in the old apartment where we were, in the rental apartment, if our bodies were kind of pulling like some kind of colors out, like where would we really have walked a lot and where are we never? And we realized that there are certain things we could completely eliminate from our life, like a big bathroom or something like that. But at the same time, we wanted a big sofa, a big kitchen where both of us could cook. So we made a big double kitchen, as you can see in the right photo. In the back there's a tiny bathroom, and upstairs, behind that wall separation, there's a little bedroom. So we have all the features of a normal house, just no hallways, no in-between spaces. And most people that come there describe it as very roomy and airy and nice when you walk in. It's very efficient room use, but it works really, really well for us. So our tiny house life now We built the house, again from a lot of recycled materials. That cost us about 25,000 euros in materials. We put a hefty but very good solar system. We have 8 solar panels on the roof that give us enough electricity to, I think, we can be self-sufficient for about 340 days a year, probably. The rest of the time we just plug it in like a mobile phone because we bought some really nice lithium-ion batteries for it. So we're fully off the grid actually. We're producing our own electricity, not for air heating and for water heating because that's quite energy intensive. And with the solar panels that we have, we couldn't do that. But we have all our lighting, we have a fridge, we charge our laptops and gadgets, everything on our own solar power. And I remember the first time the electrician came and said, turn on the lights, and I was like, yeah, it's on. Why? And he's like, because you're not plugged in anymore. Whoa, I could just make my own electricity. And we've been living like that for about 9 months now. And the light almost never goes off. Sometimes it does now in the middle of the night usually. But, so we're actually producing our own electricity, which is incredible. We're also producing our own water, which is, I guess, equally incredible if you think about how easy it was. We utilize rainwater actually. We've got a barrel of 10,000 liters. We integrated a rainwater catching system into our roof. We catch the rainwater with double pipes. We put it in the tank. We filter it with sand, sediment, shells from the ocean, active coal, all of these things, UV filters. And at the end of the day, at the end of the process, we actually get drinkable, healthy water from our tap. But only like 2 meters further was made from rainwater from our roof. So we're living in a house that gives us our own electricity, our own water, and we can live fully self-sufficient in the means that we don't need any piping, we don't need any electricity, electrical wires running to the house, and we also don't need sewage because we live on a dry composting toilet system, of which there are many very Gucci, kind of luxurious versions online, but we just went for the bucket and the separator. And you actually poop in a bucket, the pee goes the front way out in a drain, and you mix your pee with 80-20 water, urine, and it's fertilizer. And you mix your poop with a bit of sawdust, and it's fertilizer 3 years later as well. And you naturally close that circle that is there naturally to begin with, but that we have kind of over the years artificially interrupted. And there is no waste product left behind after a couple of years of compostation. So what we can do is actually, we need no lines, we produce all of the things ourselves. Electricity, water, and we can take a house with us basically on all our different chapters of our life. If we decide to go to Portugal in a couple of years or something, we can literally just get a big car, hang the house behind it, and we're going to be, our cats are going to be leaving the door somewhere on the beach in Portugal, probably freaking out where they are. But it's pretty cool, and it's been a very rewarding journey for us. And we are living in a tiny house village in southwest of the Netherlands now that we, like I said earlier, we established ourselves. We live there together with 4 other tiny houses, everyone off the grid, in a community of like-minded people from the late 20s to the late 30s. And it's incredible. Like you have all these things I was talking about before, from personal to material alienation, not knowing your neighbors actually. These things like we know each other, we care for each other, we do things together. You're much more sustainable just by cooking together and having all social activities together all the time. So the lifestyle in a tiny house is even more than we expected. I think it's a very, very rewarding lifestyle to have. And I thought, how is the idea of a tiny house viable for the many people in the future as well? Because obviously it is a quite radical choice to move into a space of 23 square meters and drink rainwater and shit in a bucket. How can we make that transition that our society is in at the moment. Because there is a need for smaller, slower, more mindful, more conscious. We're growing too fast for our own good, really. Population is growing. The society is transitioning. Like it wasn't too long ago that we didn't have internet, and now the sheer thought of not being able to communicate with China in a heartbeat is unthinkable. So as not just the society, but also our groups, our social collectives grow, the complexity increases, and from that arise a few things that will be, I think, quite necessary to tackle in the future, in the sense of looking at the transition from. I started really getting interested into, because of the creation of tiny house villages, what are the smallest successful forms of human cohabitation. One of them led me to the kibbutz in Israel, for example, where people often, let's say, a community of 70 to 150 people live together, very basic democratically. If I get sick and I need to go to the doctor, we are going to vote whether that's a viable option or we choose to do that. And then you compare that, not even to London, but to any city that is bigger than a couple of 100,000. And it's not just that you don't know the people around you anymore, but also the governments. The people decide on my behalf because I elected them 3 years earlier or something. It all becomes very abstract to just feel that you're part of the things that are actually happening around you. And it's the same with businesses. Like, there are so many wonderful new craft, bottom-up businesses coming everywhere around the world now. But my brother, for example, started a coffee house, and it went so well that soon he was confronted with the choice. Do I open a second one, a third one? Do I get more people in? But with the responsibility also grows the challenge of how do I take my vision that I once had, and I kind of present it to every single employee in a way that they carry my vision as well. And I think that's really hard to keep, if you keep just going vertically. I think that's a very idealistic thought. But if you have a company with a couple of thousand people working for you, it's going to be very hard to get everyone on the same boat and actually have them feeling what you feel, why it is that we do what we do with the companies that we start. So I think, as with the tiny houses, I think it's a much more viable option for the future to also think more horizontally in a way. That if you have a business model that works really well, why don't you just duplicate it, give someone else charge of it, and just let things go in a small fashion next to each other. And the same with micro communities, because having started life in a tiny house, soon I realized that it was a gigantic niche market that is growing more and more, not just as a trend, but actually as a viable option that people from all over the world want to actually live in smaller spaces, and mobility is something that they really cherish as well. So we also started working on the creation of an infrastructure for tiny houses, because there's tons of people that want to live in a tiny house at the moment, but there's two approaches. Either you build a tiny house, you go to the council and you say, here I am, deal with me, which is kind of what we did. It's a bit of a bold move, but also it's sometimes necessary in order to tell people that you're not a caravan and that it is something new and different. And the other one is just to wait until there is more infrastructure for tiny houses. So that's what we're trying to facilitate at the moment. So we're really trying to sell the idea that those books written about as well, micro communities, which is a quite wonderful thing if it really kicks off. Where you counteract this global loneliness that we were talking about before. You start replicating. As soon as you've reached a certain limit of members, you start replicating a village in another space. And thereby you keep a quite linear structure, and you make sure that people actually know each other, that they can govern together, and they feel a part of the collective. They can share, they can interact. We're now working with building developers that want to do libraries of things, for example, where even with big boys, like when they build an apartment complex now, for example, for 350 people, they are saying, why does everyone need to buy the same drill at the same B&Q hardware shop? We could just make a collective shared DIY area where we put drills for everyone. Maybe you have 3 of them, but that everyone uses them. Because if you think about it, everything else is absurd. Why do you need your own shed and your own drill if you all have the same needs? So what these people are doing, they're getting together, they're getting to know each other. It's almost like the romantic old idea of going to your neighbor for half a kilo of sugar or something like that. because you actually, often these days when we interact with our people, we're being looked at as if I look someone in the eyes and it's you, they would literally look, you weird person, like. And but I think people from young to old really want to feel connected again and actually meet each other, even if you work next to each other in a co-working space, because it really gives you a sense of being next to each other, being in each other's spheres is something that is just so much more creative or stimulating rather than doing things on your own. And the last thing was that the mobility of these places. What we're working for at the moment is that if you have a tiny house, because most of them don't apply to the regulations of a normal house, let's say stairs are 70 centimeters wide and people have a railing here and there, things that are not really viable in tiny houses. So what we're working on is, first of all, implement the concept of a tiny house in the European building zoning and design, and also to facilitate an infrastructure for tiny houses in Europe, which is quite hard because every council tells you we have no space. Like you hear that wherever you go in Europe, we don't have any space. But then we realize that what people do have is a lot of unused building land, where in 6 years there's going to be a shopping mall, or in 5 years it's going to be apartments. So we're working on actually creating a temporary network of places where you can actually put your tiny house on. The other option is that you just build it according to the zoning, which would mean that it's a bit bigger and wouldn't fit on a trailer that nice anymore. And that's also an option. But I think there is a pretty strong, not just short-term need now for tiny houses on wheels. I think many more people just want to live mobile and small and self-sufficient with energy and water and things like that. And whether that's a tiny house or any kind of other form of small, conscious, mindful living, it doesn't really matter. I think we're staying at the moment at a wonderful canal boat of our friends Felix, and it's incredible. Like, it doesn't matter where you are, if you're on the water or on a pair of wheels, as long as you actually get the chance to live within a place like this here as well. Like it took us about 35-40 minutes to take the tube in from out there where we were by the canal. So we can still be a part of modern society. We don't need to make that choice anymore. Do I want to be a black and white hippie that has to live on the outskirts of society, or do I just play by the rules? I think there is a viable alternative in between. We just need to kind of really work on implementing the idea of mobility and small living, and maybe also temporary living, which a lot of people are struggling with, because they think of housing as something where you need security and safety. And the first question we always ask is, what are you going to do in 2 years? That's when our first project now will run out. And I think you need, as a pioneer, you need to take these risks. And the idea is that in the future, if we have a network of places where you can actually rotate, just like a canal boat, you can actually stay a couple of years here and there, and it's going to be a viable option, hopefully, for everyone. But I think just to conclude this talk and to go into the Q&A, I think the most important thing for me is just that most people want to talk about tiny houses at the moment because it's such a hot topic, and there are so many beautiful Instagram shots of tiny houses from all over the world. But what it's actually about is, I think for me, is that there is a need why people want to live in tiny houses. It's not because they cannot afford a real house, like many people ask us often. I'm just living in this until we can have a real house afterwards. I think that the thing that we're getting at is this should be a viable option in the future. I think we're running low on space, we're running low on resources, and once you downsize, you actually realize that it's so little that you actually need in order to be happy. And the tiny house method is so painfully apparent for us. But it's not about living in a tiny house. You can live in a sustainable cave if you dig it nicely enough for yourself or something like that. You can do co-house sharing projects with like-minded people. There's really a lot of ways to escape the 9-to-5 hamster wheeling these days without building your own house in a trailer. But it is a very viable option. I think we are making a lot of progress in Europe at the moment. And I think hopefully in the future you're going to be seeing quite a lot of more houses driving past you on a little trailer. I just heard a clock beep. Is it full hour now?
Oh no, yeah, that's
So basically, the moral of the story is for me, build a tiny house if you feel like it. It's going to make you feel like Superman. And if you can build a house, you can do anything. Like, I've got 2 left hands and I built a house for myself. And it's still standing. And I hope we haven't been home around. But you can definitely go for it and think about quite new alternative ways of living, small and sustainable. And contributing on the way a lot to the bigger picture, because for me, a lot of people think now that you're a sustainability guy if you live in a tiny house. But sustainability for me wasn't the starting point. For me, the starting point was freedom and self-fulfillment. But once you live a conscious life and you look at the life cycle of things and you realize the background process of how our society works, if you live consciously and mindfully, you're going to live sustainably as well, I think. And I think this is why we are now maybe sustainable people, because the choices we made were to break abstractation, actually look at what's behind. And I encourage everyone to do it, because it's really a great fulfilling process. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to end it up. Thank you.